She had the credentials, the ticket, and the confidence. Yet one guard's bias turned a routine flight into a fight for dignity. What happened next will leave you questioning how far we've really come. It was an early Friday morning, and the private hangar at Dallas Love Field buzzed quietly with activity. The air carried the faint scent of jet fuel and fresh rain, a reminder of the brief storm that had passed through the night before. Deborah stepped out of her sleek black car, her driver offering a quick nod as he handed her a neatly packed travel bag. She adjusted her tailored blazer, its sharp lines accentuating her confidence, and checked her phone for the time. The flight was scheduled to depart in less than an hour, but she had arrived early, as she always did. Punctuality was just one of the many traits that had propelled her to the top of her industry. Deborah was no stranger to private aviation. As the CEO of a thriving tech company, private jets were a necessity more than a luxury. Today's meeting in Scottsdale could determine the next big partnership for her company, and she intended to arrive prepared and poised. Her assistant had already arranged for everything to run smoothly. The jet was fueled, the pilots were ready, and all she had to do was board. She strode confidently toward the entrance, her heels clicking against the polished concrete. Inside, a young receptionist greeted her with a warm smile, confirming her flight details. "You're all set, Ms. Reed. Just head down to Gate 3, and the staff will escort you to the tarmac." Deborah thanked her and continued, her mind already shifting to the presentation she'd be delivering in a few hours. But as she approached Gate 3, a stocky man in a security uniform stepped into her path. His name tag read H. Daniels. Deborah slowed her pace, offering a polite smile, assuming he was just performing a routine check. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone sharp enough to cut through the air. "Yes, I'm here for the 8:30 flight to Scottsdale," she replied, holding out her boarding pass and identification. Her voice was calm, professional, the same tone she used to command boardrooms. The man barely glanced at her documents before shaking his head. "This gate is for private flights. You're in the wrong place." Deborah raised an eyebrow. "I am aware. This is my flight." Daniel's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a smirk. "Right. Ma'am, I think you're confused. Maybe you should check with the main terminal." The words hung in the air like a slap. Deborah's smile faltered, but she quickly regained her composure. "I don't believe I'm confused," she said firmly. "This is my flight. The jet parked at Gate 3 belongs to me." Daniel's smirk faded, replaced by a glint of suspicion. He stepped closer, lowering his voice as if trying to assert dominance. "Listen, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I need you to step away from the gate." Deborah's pulse quickened, but she refused to let it show. Instead, she squared her shoulders and maintained eye contact. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. My assistant can confirm my itinerary, or you can contact the flight crew." She reached for her phone, but Daniels raised a hand to stop her. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," he said, his voice louder now, drawing the attention of a few nearby staff members. Deborah glanced around, noticing the curious glances directed her way. The humiliation crept in, but she pushed it aside. She had dealt with obstacles her entire life, and she wasn't about to let this man's ignorance derail her day. But what Deborah didn't know was that this confrontation was just beginning to unravel. The clock was ticking, and the situation was about to escalate in ways she hadn't anticipated. The tension thickened as Deborah stood her ground, her unwavering gaze meeting Daniel's challenging stare. She took a deliberate step back, not in retreat, but to compose herself. Her phone vibrated in her hand, and she glanced at the screen. Her assistant Patricia was calling. Perfect timing. "Excuse me," Deborah said firmly, turning slightly away from Daniels to answer the call. "Patricia, I need you to confirm my flight details with the staff here. There seems to be a misunderstanding." Patricia's calm voice came through the line. "Of course, Ms. Reed. Let me speak with whoever is there." Deborah extended the phone toward Daniels. "My assistant is on the line. She can clarify everything." Daniel's lips thinned into a tight line, but he didn't take the phone. Instead, he crossed his arms. "Ma'am, I don't need to speak with anyone. I'm telling you, this gate is off limits unless you have proper authorization." Deborah's patience was wearing thin. She ended the call with Patricia and tucked her phone into her pocket. "I've shown you my authorization. My name is on the manifest, and I'm asking you to do your job and verify it." Her voice remained steady, but there was an undeniable edge now. The staff members nearby began murmuring among themselves, their curious gazes flickering between Deborah and Daniels. One young man, wearing a ground crew uniform, hesitated before stepping forward. Ms. Reed, I can check with the flight crew if you'd like." Daniels shot the young man a glare that froze him in his tracks. "Stay out of this," Daniels barked. "This is a security matter." Deborah's jaw clenched, but she drew a deep breath, refusing to let the situation get the better of her. She knew that raising her voice or losing her temper would only play into the narrative Daniels seemed intent on creating. Little did she realize her measured response was about to be met with an escalation she couldn't ignore. A sudden burst of determination coursed through Deborah. She stepped to the side, out of Daniels' immediate reach, and scanned the room for anyone with authority. She spotted a senior airport staff member, a woman in a navy blazer with a badge that read, Operations Manager. Wasting no time, Deborah approached her. "Excuse me," Deborah began, her tone polite but firm. "I'm experiencing an issue with security at Gate 3. Could you assist me?" The manager glanced at Deborah, then at Daniels, who was now striding toward them with a scowl. "What seems to be the problem?" the manager asked. "I've shown my identification and boarding pass, but this gentleman is refusing to let me board my flight," Deborah explained. "I've asked him to verify my details with the flight crew, but he's declined." The manager frowned. "Let me look into this." She turned to Daniels. "What's going on here?" Daniels shifted uncomfortably. "She doesn't belong here. I was just doing my job." The manager's expression hardened. "And did you verify her documentation?" Daniels hesitated. "I didn't need to. I can tell." "You can tell what?" the manager interjected, her voice sharp. "That's not how we operate. If she's provided proper identification, you're obligated to verify it." A tense silence followed as the manager turned back to Deborah. "Ms. Reed, I'll handle this personally. Let me speak with the flight crew to confirm your details." Deborah nodded, grateful for the intervention. As the manager walked away, Daniels muttered something under his breath, but Deborah chose to ignore him. The murmurs among the staff grew louder, and Deborah could feel the weight of their stares. Still, she stood tall, refusing to let the moment diminish her. But as the truth began to surface, the tide was about to turn in Deborah's favor. The manager returned a few minutes later, her expression a mix of professionalism and quiet indignation. "Ms. Reed, I've confirmed everything with the flight crew. You are indeed the rightful passenger for the 8:30 flight. I apologize for this inconvenience." Deborah nodded. "Thank you. I appreciate your assistance." Her voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the resolute tone that carried her words. Turning to Daniels, the manager's gaze hardened. "We need to talk in my office after this. Your behavior was unacceptable. If you had any doubts, you should have verified her information instead of escalating the situation unnecessarily." Daniels's face flushed, but he remained silent, his earlier bravado entirely absent. The manager gestured for Deborah to follow her, and they walked toward the tarmac. As they approached the sleek jet waiting for her, the ground crew stepped aside respectfully, offering polite nods. Deborah paused at the base of the jet's stairs and turned to the manager. "I hope this serves as a reminder to treat every passenger with the respect they deserve, regardless of assumptions." The manager nodded. "It will. Again, I apologize on behalf of the staff here." Deborah ascended the stairs, her head held high. As she settled into her seat, she allowed herself a moment to breathe deeply. The ordeal had been draining, but it also served as a reminder of the challenges she'd overcome and the strength she carried within her. But as the jet lifted off the ground, Deborah's mind shifted to what lay ahead, knowing this was one more battle she had faced and won. As the jet climbed higher into the morning sky, Deborah gazed out the window, her thoughts swirling. The ordeal at the airport had been unsettling, but it wasn't unfamiliar. She had spent her life navigating spaces where she wasn't expected, proving herself in rooms where her competence was questioned before she could even speak. Yet, this incident felt different, not because of its uniqueness, but because of its timing. The Scottsdale meeting was crucial, but Deborah couldn't ignore the broader implications of what had happened. Her life's journey was filled with triumphs born from perseverance, and today was no exception. Still, she couldn't shake the awareness that moments like these were part of a larger systemic issue. a constant reminder of the assumptions people made based on appearances. Reaching into her bag, she pulled out her tablet and opened a blank document. Deborah often found solace in writing after moments of conflict. She began typing, capturing her thoughts and feelings about the experience, but with a broader focus on how to inspire change. She envisioned sharing this story, not as a tale of victimhood, but as an example of resilience, a testament to what it meant to stand firm in the face of ignorance. The jet's engines hummed steadily, the noise fading into the background as Deborah became engrossed in her writing. She wrote not just for herself, but for the countless others who faced similar battles every day. Her words flowed with clarity and purpose, each sentence a step toward creating a narrative of empowerment and awareness. As the plane began its descent into Scottsdale, Deborah saved the document with a title that felt fitting: Lessons at Gate 3. She would share this experience in her upcoming speaking engagements, not as a complaint, but as a call to action. Respect wasn't something people should have to demand. It should be given freely, regardless of preconceptions. When the wheels touched the runway, Deborah felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a CEO heading to a business meeting. She was someone with a platform, a voice that could amplify the need for change. The incident at the airport was a reminder of the work still to be done, and Deborah was ready to take it on, not just for herself, but for the next generation of leaders. As she stepped off the jet and onto the tarmac, Deborah took a deep breath of the desert air. The meeting ahead was important, but so was the message she carried with her now. Strengthened by the morning's events, she walked forward with the determination that had always defined her journey. This isn't just about one woman's battle. It's about creating a world where everyone can take their rightful place without barriers built on assumptions. Let's work together to make that a reality. If this story resonates with you, share it, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one.